One evening in Austin, I came home early, an hour earlier than I normally would. It wasn't planned. My last client canceled, traffic was surprisingly light for once, and I figured I'd take the extra time to relax, maybe even surprise Emily with takeout from that Thai place she liked. I remember feeling unusually light as I parked the car, humming to some song on the radio I can't even remember now. But the second I stepped inside, that easy feeling drained right out of me. You know how sometimes a house feels different, like it's holding its breath? That's how ours felt. The silence wasn't normal, it was too still. No background noise from the TV or Spotify, no sound of Emily on the phone or in the kitchen. Just nothing. I walked into the living room and dropped my keys in the bowl like always. Then I noticed the air. It smelled like lavender and steam, the way the house does after someone's taken a long, hot shower. But the weird part? There wasn't a sound coming from the bathroom. The water was off. The shower had clearly just been used, but whoever had used it wasn't in there anymore. I made my way to the kitchen, and that's when my stomach dropped. There were 2 wine glasses sitting on the table. One nearly empty, the other about half full. Still warm. That kind of warm that tells you they were just poured maybe 10-15 minutes ago. And next to them, carelessly slung over the back of one of our dining chairs, was a black leather jacket. A man's jacket. Not mine. It didn't look brand new either. The leather was creased and broken in, soft in the way only age and use could do. It had this faint scent, too. Not overpowering, but there. Like cologne and smoke, the kind of smell that clings to someone's clothes when they live in that jacket. For a second, I just stood there, staring at it. I didn't touch it. Didn't want to. I looked at the wine again. The glasses were identical, ours. I picked up the warmer one and felt the base. No condensation, but it was definitely freshly used. That's when I heard the front door open. Emily's voice floated in cheerfully, almost too casually. "Hey, you're home early." I turned to look at her. She was carrying a brown paper grocery bag in both arms, squinting slightly like she'd just walked from sunlight into a dim room. Her hair was dry, bone dry, styled, actually, pulled back in that way she does when she wants to look casual but still put together. Her makeup was fresh, subtle but deliberate. She didn't look like someone who had just taken a hot shower. Not even close. "Yeah," I said, nodding slowly. "Last client canceled. Figured I'd beat traffic." "Nice," she said, walking right past me and into the kitchen like nothing was off. She set the bag down on the counter and started unpacking it. Milk, salad mix, a bottle of wine. A different one than the one on the table. "Lisa was here earlier," she said suddenly, as if reading my mind. "Her boyfriend dropped her off. That's probably his jacket. I told you she was stopping by." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She was moving quickly, too quickly. Not in a panicked way, but in that calculated, overly calm way people do when they're trying to steer a conversation. Her voice was light, her tone bright, like she was filling the space with noise on purpose. "Brought her some stuff for her new apartment," she added. "She's got a mess going on with her landlord. Nightmare. You probably don't remember. I mentioned it last week." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Did she mention it? Maybe. Couldn't be sure. I worked late a lot, and sometimes she'd tell me things mid-scroll while we were half watching TV. It was possible I'd nodded along and didn't actually absorb it. But something about her delivery didn't sit right. "You said Lisa was coming over?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "You've just been traveling so much. I don't think we've been on the same page lately." She gave a tight little laugh, then turned toward the fridge. "Honestly, I barely see you during the week anymore." She said it like a joke, but it landed sharp. "I didn't know she drank red," I said, motioning to the glasses. Emily didn't miss a beat. "She doesn't. That was me. Long day." She smiled. "Don't look so shocked. I know I usually go for white, but I've been trying to branch out." I raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. Instead, I moved toward the hallway. "So she just left?" "Yeah, like 20 minutes ago. You must have just missed her." "And the jacket?" "Like I said, it's probably her boyfriend's." She pulled out her phone, typing something quickly. I'll text her. Make sure they didn't forget it. I nodded again, slow this time. Bathroom still smells like a sauna. Emily looked up, blinking. I used the shower after she left. I turned to her. Your hair's dry. She paused, then gave a shrug. Blow dryer. There was something in the way she said it, offhand, like she was daring me to keep asking. Her eyes didn't waver. I stared at her for a second longer and then turned away. Okay, I said finally. Guess that checks out. She smiled. Babe, you've got to stop working so much. You're getting paranoid. I gave a dry laugh. Right? She walked past me again, brushing her hand briefly against my arm in a way that was supposed to be comforting, but all it did was make my skin crawl, like she was trying to erase the last few minutes with one touch. I watched her as she started chopping vegetables like nothing had happened, like there hadn't been any trace of someone else here. No jacket, no warm wine, no steam, no silence when I walked in. And maybe that's what bothered me most. The way she moved on from it so easily, the way she redirected the entire moment toward me. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a performance, a very smooth one, and on the surface it worked. She'd accounted for every detail. The jacket, Lisa's boyfriend's. The wine, hers. The shower, hers again. And me? I was the inattentive husband who worked too much and paid too little attention. I didn't say another word about it. Didn't ask why she was so composed or why there were 2 glasses if Lisa didn't drink red. I didn't press about the dry hair or the weird timing or how I hadn't seen Lisa's car when I pulled up. Instead, I let it slide. Outwardly, everything looked like a coincidence. The details lined up just enough for me to doubt my own instincts. But that night, I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled through her phone and pretended we were fine. I knew better. Something had shifted, and whether she admitted it or not, I had felt the air change when I walked through that door. I didn't sleep much that night. Emily was curled up on her side of the bed, her breathing slow and steady, like none of it bothered her. Meanwhile, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of what I'd seen when I got home. The wine glasses, the jacket, the steam, her dry hair, the way she deflected everything so smoothly, so easily, like she'd practiced it in her head a dozen times before I ever walked through the door. She was calm, too calm, confident, and somehow that made it worse. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was tired, that I'd been working too much, that I was creating a problem where there wasn't one. But it didn't stick. The more I tried to dismiss it, the more my brain dug in its heels. So I lay there, listening to her breathe, and I thought about everything I hadn't wanted to admit until now. Like the smell in her car. It had happened 3, maybe 4 times over the past couple months. I'd get in, usually to grab something she'd forgotten or because she asked me to fill the tank, and the first thing I'd notice was a scent that didn't belong to her. Not her perfume. Not mine. Something sharper. A distinctly male cologne. Musky, expensive. Not the kind you pick up at the Dr. store. I remember asking about it the first time. She'd shrugged it off with a laugh and said she'd given a coworker a ride after a meeting ran late. Tom wears way too much cologne, she'd said. It practically sticks to the seatbelt. And I believed her. Because that's what you do when you love someone, you believe them. Even when the explanation feels a little too convenient. I thought back to the plumber, too. A few weeks ago, I came home early, another canceled appointment, and found a white van parked in front of our house. Emily answered the door, clearly surprised to see me. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She said we had a leak under the sink and she'd called someone. Only, I didn't remember her mentioning it, and I was usually the one who handled that stuff. But when I asked, she got flustered, said she tried to reach me and couldn't wait, that it was just a quick fix. The guy was in the living room when I walked in, wiping his hands with a towel. He nodded at me, barely said a word, then grabbed his toolbox and left like he was in a hurry. No invoice, no card, no company name on the van. When I brought it up later, she said he was a friend of a friend. Off the books. Cheaper that way. I didn't like it, but again I let it slide. Now, in hindsight, I couldn't help but wonder, was that even a plumber? And then there were the disappearing weekends. Emily had always been social. She had friends from college, from work, from yoga. That wasn't new. But over the last couple of months, she'd started vanishing for entire afternoons, sometimes longer, saying she was meeting up with the girls, or helping someone move or running errands on the other side of town. Her phone always stayed on silent. She'd laugh when I asked about it. "What? You don't trust me to go to Target without a bodyguard?" It was always light, always playful. But now that I looked back, there were too many excuses, too many vagaries. She never sent pictures from those outings anymore. She used to. Now her stories were always just out of reach, like she was giving me just enough to keep from asking questions. Even her Instagram had changed. It was subtle at first. Photos of meals where you could see 2 plates, 2 drinks, but no one else in the sh*t. A pair of sunglasses resting on the edge of a cafe table. Aviators I didn't recognize. Interior sh*ts of restaurants we'd never been to, with captions like solo time or self-care Sundays. But they didn't look solo at all. The angles were too wide, too posed, and sometimes she'd tag no one. When I'd ask about it, she'd just roll her eyes. "God, you sound like a jealous teenager. It's just coffee." And maybe that's all it was. Maybe it really was nothing. But something inside me had shifted. Trust is a strange thing. You don't really notice it when it's there. It's like air, quiet, invisible, something you just assume will always be around. But once doubt creeps in, once the cracks begin to show, it's like trying to breathe through a straw. Every little thing feels heavy. Every glance becomes a test. That week, I started paying attention. I watched how she avoided letting me see her phone screen, how she'd leave the room to take certain calls, or suddenly forget her charger at work and let her battery die before she got home. I noticed she'd started dressing differently. Not drastically, Emily always had great taste, but it felt more curated, like she was dressing for someone. Clothes that fit a little tighter. Lipstick she hadn't worn since we were dating. Perfume only on certain days. I caught her humming once, getting ready to go out. I asked where she was headed. "Book club," she said. "You never mentioned a book club." She smiled. "I just joined. Nothing serious." "What are you reading?" She paused just long enough to make my stomach twist. "Some memoir. I forgot the title. I'll text you later." She never did. I started writing things down. I didn't want to. It felt pathetic. But I couldn't trust my own memory anymore. Not with the way she spun things. So I kept a small notebook in the glove compartment of my car. Dates, times, little observations. It helped me feel grounded. Like I wasn't crazy. Because that's the thing no one tells you about this kind of suspicion. It's isolating. You don't want to be the guy who accuses his wife without proof. You don't want to look paranoid or controlling or insecure. So you bottle it up, second-guess yourself, and smile through dinner even when your insides are unraveling. One night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't proud of it, but I looked, just for a second, just to see. There were no messages, no photos, nothing that pointed clearly in any direction. But her browser history showed a hotel reservation site. 2 visits in the last week. Not just browsing, logged in, checking confirmations. I typed in the name. A boutique hotel downtown. One I didn't recognize. I looked up the dates. One matched a weekend she said she was helping a friend with a bridal shower. The other? Work team building retreat. Except she works in HR. And their office barely had a team to begin with. I didn't say anything. What would I say? That I snooped? That I didn't believe her? That every inch of my gut was screaming and I needed her to admit something she clearly didn't want to? So I waited, watched, collected, and all of it. The wine glasses, the jacket, the cologne, the disappearing weekends, the half-truths. It started forming a picture I couldn't ignore anymore. Something was happening. Whether she wanted to admit it or not, whether I had irrefutable proof or not, the woman I fell in love with, the one who used to leave me notes in my lunch, who called me just to hear my voice, was slipping away. And someone else was stepping into her place. Someone who smiled too easily, who always had a reason, who always had an answer. I didn't know what my next move was yet, but I knew I wasn't imagining it. This was real. The moment I knew was a Friday afternoon. I'd finished a lunch meeting near downtown, some low-stakes pitch with a vendor I barely listened to. My mind had been elsewhere the entire time, running through all the half-truths, the suspicious gaps in Emily's schedule, the unanswered questions I kept pretending didn't matter. I wasn't supposed to be in that part of the city. I wasn't supposed to be driving past the Crescent, a boutique hotel tucked off Congress Avenue with valet-only parking and soft jazz always playing through the front awning. But I was, and there she was, standing outside the entrance, laughing. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark hair, well-dressed. The kind of guy who looks like he knows exactly how he's perceived. He had his hand on her back, low, familiar. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. Then, God help me, she took his hand in hers, held it, and they walked inside together. No glance over the shoulder. No nerves. Just two people comfortable in the routine of sneaking around. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. I drove straight home, barely able to feel the steering wheel under my hands. My thoughts were white noise. No yelling. No tears. Just this strange, cold clarity. The kind of silence that shows up when something finally snaps. I sat in the driveway for maybe 15 minutes. Engine off. Windows down. Trying to feel something, rage, grief, betrayal, but instead, all I felt was confirmation. A heavy, horrible sense of, so this is it. You were right all along. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't wait at the door, pacing, waiting to catch her in another lie. I didn't want a screaming match or some fake tearful confession dragged out of her. I just needed time. So I went upstairs, logged into our bank account, and started pulling up statements. There it was. A charge for the Crescent Hotel. From 2 weeks ago. A double room. 1 night only. I searched back further. Found another, smaller transaction, same hotel, this one from the work retreat weekend. I scrolled through the list like I was scanning someone else's story. Dinner reservations for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to. A Lyft ride charged to our joint card from an address I didn't recognize. A receipt for wine and chocolates from a boutique shop near the river. Every single one a nail in the coffin. And suddenly everything aligned. The jacket, the wine, the fake plans, the half-finished stories. She hadn't been improvising. She'd been rehearsing, playing me, polishing a lie so thoroughly it sounded like truth. And I'd let it happen, over and over again. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed on the couch, in the dark, staring at the ceiling while the numbers replayed in my head. The amounts didn't matter. What hurt was the effort she put into hiding it. How organized, how deliberate. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was an affair. A real one. The next morning I got up before she did. The air in the house felt stale. Heavy. Like the silence between us had mass. She came down around 10, stretching like it was a normal Saturday, tying her robe loosely around her waist. She gave me a soft smile as she stepped into the kitchen. "Morning," she said, reaching for the kettle. "You're up early." I didn't answer. She kept going like she didn't notice. "I thought I'd run by the farmer's market later. Need anything?" "No," I said flatly. She paused, glanced over her shoulder. "Everything okay?" I looked at her, really looked. Her face was open, innocent. The same face I'd memorized 100 different ways. But now all I could see was what it had hidden. "You lie really well," I said quietly. The words stopped her cold. She turned fully now, the kettle forgotten. "What?" I said, "You lie well. I used to think I just wasn't paying attention. But no. This was all intentional, wasn't it?" Her brows knit together, confusion morphing into concern. "David, what are you talking about?" I reached for my laptop, already open on the table. I spun it around. The hotel charge sat at the top of the statement. Date highlighted. Room number on the receipt. Her face paled. "Why were you at the Crescent yesterday?" I asked. She blinked. "I saw you," I continued, "outside. With him." She didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Her hand went to her temple, pressing hard. David, I saw you hold his hand. A pause. Then, finally, she sat down across from me. Her fingers trembled as they traced the edge of her mug. You weren't supposed to see that, she said softly. The honesty in that single sentence hit me like a punch. So it's true, I said. You've been cheating. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tried again. It's not. Don't. Please. I held up a hand. Don't insult me with that. It's not what you think line. She flinched. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. I felt strangely calm. Too calm. So who is he? She hesitated. Just someone from the gym. The gym, I repeated, nodding slowly. Of course. Her voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I laughed. Not out of humor, just disbelief. You booked hotel rooms. It went pretty far. She didn't speak, just stared at her hands. Was it serious? I asked. I don't know, she whispered. You don't know, I echoed. That's comforting. Then, after a long silence, she looked up at me with something raw in her eyes, shame, maybe, or fear, or both. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I nodded. But you did. More silence, the kind that fills a room like fog. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. It started because I felt invisible, like you weren't really here anymore. And this was your solution? I asked. To see if someone else would make you feel seen? She didn't answer. I gave you everything, I said, not to guilt her, just to remind her. The house, the time, the space. Every business trip I took was for us. You know that, right? She nodded. You could have talked to me. You could have said something. Instead, you tested me. That was the part one couldn't let go. The way she nice silence. The way she waited to be caught. What did you want me to do, Emily? I asked. Fall to my knees? Beg you to stay? Her voice was barely audible. No. Then what? I don't know, she said. I thought. Maybe if I pushed things far enough, you'd see how checked out you've been. I stared at her. She met my eyes. I didn't think you'd just walk away. I nodded slowly. Well, you were wrong. I stood up, grabbed my keys from the counter. Where are you going? She asked. To clear my head, I said. And to call a lawyer. She stood too, panic flaring in her eyes. David, wait. No, I said, firm now. You made your choice. You don't get to rewrite it now. Her voice cracked. But can't we just talk? I think we just did. And with that, I walked out the door, letting the silence swallow the rest. By the time I came back that evening, I had already decided what needed to happen. I didn't go on some long walk to reflect. I didn't call a friend or sit by the water to weigh my options. I parked in a lot down the street, opened my laptop in the passenger seat, and searched for divorce attorneys. Quietly, methodically, no panic, no rage. Just a firm, hollow calm that had settled into my chest like poured concrete. The first one I called didn't pick up. The second did. Her name was Margaret Lane. Highly rated, sharp, known for her minimal drama approach. I liked that. I didn't want a war. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. By Monday, I had signed the papers. We didn't have kids, and our finances were straightforward. The house was in both our names, but I didn't want to fight for it. It was tainted now, every room carrying the echo of things I hadn't seen happening. So I told Margaret, give her the house. Give her the furniture. I want none of it. She paused on the other end of the line. That's very generous. It's not generosity, I said. It's distance. I spent that week staying at a hotel near the lake. Simple, clean, nothing fancy. I worked remotely from the little desk in the corner, took long walks in the morning, stared at the ceiling at night. My appetite vanished, but my clarity sharpened. I went through everything Emily had left behind in my mind, frame by frame. Every lie, every deflection, every excuse polished into sincerity. I didn't feel hatred, just something heavier. When the papers were finalized, I asked Margaret to send them directly to our home address. Not to her email. Not to her office. I wanted her to find it the same way I'd found the truth. Unannounced, inescapable. I didn't tell her it was coming. 3 days later, she texted me. Emily, David, I got the letter. What is this? I didn't respond. She called 5 minutes later. I watched the phone ring out on the hotel nightstand. When the screen went dark, I placed it face down. A few minutes after that, another message. Emily, are you serious right now? You're ending our marriage without even speaking to me? Still, I didn't reply, because we had spoken. We'd spoken with more honesty that Saturday morning than we had in months. Everything else she was hoping to say now was cleanup. Negotiation. A new spin on a tired story. No, I wasn't going to entertain it. I left her the house and the furniture. Cancelled my name from the utilities. Transferred the mortgage into her sole account. I kept the joint savings and took nothing else. It was cleaner that way. 1 week passed. Then 2. She didn't call again. But I knew she would try something else. Not because she loved me. If she had, we wouldn't have been here. But because people like Emily don't like being denied a final scene. She wanted the last act. A chance to cry. To confess. To twist it into something noble. And sure enough, it came. It was a group message. She invited me to dinner. At a rooftop restaurant she always loved. The kind with overpriced cocktails and skyline views that looked great in pictures. I didn't reply right away. I just read the invite and stared at the names. There were 4 others on it. Her friends. The same ones who always cheered on her experiments. The ones who whispered just enough poison to tip her thinking. I'd heard them once at a party, all half-drunk, laughing about how every man needs a wake-up call. Or, sometimes you have to light a fire just to see if he'll chase the smoke. They thought they were being clever. Turns out I was just done with matches altogether. Still, I said yes, because I had one thing left to do. The night of the dinner, I arrived early. I wore a clean button-down, left the tie at home. I ordered a drink and took the seat with the view. One of the few moments I allowed myself the petty victory of claiming the table's head without saying a word. Emily walked in first. She looked surprised to see me already there, and even more surprised by how calm I looked. Her friends followed, Rachel, Nina, and that guy Chase, the one who always called marriage a performance. They sat, ordered, laughed too loudly, like this wasn't awkward as hell. I let them settle in. I waited, and then I spoke. I know everything, I said quietly but clearly. The table stilled. One of the forks clinked too hard against a plate. I know about the man at the hotel. I know it wasn't a one-time thing. I know the name on the room charges, the restaurant bills, the social media tags under fake locations. I know the texts you deleted. I know about the Friday when you said you were with Lisa, and you were actually 2 blocks from our house in his car. Emily stared at me, her jaw tight, her eyes pleading. The others glanced around, the way people do when they realize they're suddenly extras in a story they thought they were directing. I know you had help, I continued, looking directly at her friends now. I know you were encouraged. I know this whole thing was framed as some kind of test, a social experiment, a push to see how far things could go before I cracked. Rachel opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Please, don't. No speeches. I looked back at Emily. I didn't crack, I said. I just left. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't demand anything. I reached into my pocket and slid a small envelope across the table toward her. Inside was the final copy of the court filing, notarized. The divorce was complete. Not pending, finished. She opened it, her fingers trembling. This was your test, I said. And this was my answer. The silence that followed was deep. Rachel cleared her throat. Chase leaned back in his chair. Nina looked like she wanted to disappear. Emily's eyes welled up, but the tears didn't fall. This wasn't what I wanted, she said, her voice small. You wanted a reaction, I said. I gave you one, just not the one you rehearsed. She looked down at the envelope again. Then she turned to her friends. I think we're done here, she said. And just like that, she stood. It was the most honest thing I'd seen her do in months. She left the table. walked straight past the hostess, through the glass doors and down the stairs. The others scrambled to follow. I stayed behind and finished my drink. 15 minutes later, the bill came. It was paid in full. Not by me. The server smiled politely and said, "It's covered." I nodded, stood, and left. And just like that, it was over. No screaming, no bargaining, no spectacle. Just an end, quiet, cold, and clean. I didn't hear from Emily for a while after the rooftop dinner. Weeks went by. No texts, no calls, no awkward run-ins at the grocery store. I figured she needed time to process the silence. Something her plan hadn't accounted for. Her whole approach had relied on noise. Confrontation, emotion, fire. She expected me to shout, to cry, to make her feel wanted again through conflict. But when all she got was a quiet exit, it left her suspended. Powerless. The thing about silence is it's not passive. It's deliberate. It forces people to sit in their own discomfort without anyone else there to absorb the impact. And Emily hated discomfort. I wasn't surprised when I eventually got another message. Not from her, at least not directly. Came through Rachel. A bland, overly polite email. Subject: coffee? Hey David. Hope you're well. I know things have been messy, but Emily's been struggling and wants to clear the air. Maybe even get closure. She'd really appreciate it if you'd consider meeting. No pressure, of course. Just coffee. No drama. Ratch. I stared at it for a full minute before hitting delete. Closure. That word again. The favorite phrase of people who only want to smooth over the mess they created without actually cleaning it up. A week later, a group text popped up. This time, it was from Nina. Nina, hey, we're getting together this Friday at Luma Bar. Emily's going. Thought you might want to join. There was no apology in it. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a casual invite, as if we were still friends, as if nothing had happened. But I said yes. Not for Emily. Not for them. For me. I wanted to look them all in the eye one last time and make sure they understood exactly what their little push had accomplished. Friday came and I showed up 5 minutes early. Not to impress anyone, but because I didn't want to walk into a table already brimming with rehearsed apologies or worse. Fake laughter trying to drown out the awkwardness. The place was sleek, dimly lit, expensive. Of course it was. These were the same people who treated relationships like branding exercises. Image mattered more than substance. I took a seat near the middle of the long wooden table and ordered a whiskey. Neat. No garnish. A few minutes later, they arrived. Emily, Rachel, Nina, and Chase. Emily spotted me first. Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to actually show. She wore a muted blue blouse, her hair pulled back, no jewelry. Understated, like she was trying to read the room before choosing who to be. The others followed. A chorus of awkward hellos and half-hearted smiles. I nodded at each of them. No handshakes, no hugs. We sat. The first few minutes were filled with the usual filler. Drinks, menus, small talk about weather and traffic, and how crazy the city's been lately. I let them have it. I said nothing, just sipped my whiskey and waited for someone to say something real. It was Chase, of course, who broke first. So, he said, stretching the word like it was heavy. This is probably overdue. No one spoke. Emily stared at her water. I think we all know things didn't go how anyone planned, Chase continued, glancing around like he was waiting for backup. There were a lot of feelings, a lot of miscommunications. I raised an eyebrow. Miscommunications. He hesitated. Look, I'm not saying what happened was okay, but from the outside, it seemed like maybe you and Emily weren't exactly aligned, and sometimes friends step in to help. I gave a short laugh. Not amused, just amazed. To help? I repeated. Rachel spoke next, her voice more careful. We didn't mean for it to go this far, David. We really thought it would spark something between you two, that it would make you fight for the marriage. Emily's head remained down. Interesting strategy, I said. Encourage her to cheat, lie, manipulate, to see how far she could push before I broke. Was that the plan? Rachel flushed. No, God, no. It wasn't like that. I turned to Emily. Wasn't it? She looked up slowly, meeting my eyes. There was no smugness left in her expression. Just fatigue. Shame. Like she'd finally accepted that there wasn't going to be a dramatic reconciliation. I thought, she said quietly, that maybe if things got worse, you'd finally see how far apart we drifted, that it would wake us up, that maybe we'd fix it. I nodded. So you escalated. You orchestrated a collapse to see if I'd rebuild it with you. She winced. You wanted chaos, I said, and you got peace instead. And now you don't know what to do with it. The table fell silent again. I looked at her friends, each of them suddenly very interested in the condensation on their glasses. You all thought you were pushing us toward something, I said. You weren't. You were pushing her out of a marriage and into an affair. You treated it like a game, like it was some social experiment to see how a man reacts under pressure. Chase started to speak, but I didn't let him. I didn't react, I said. I acted. And now she's divorced, and you're sitting here trying to pretend it wasn't your fault. Rachel's eyes were wet now, whether from guilt or just embarrassment. I didn't know. Didn't care. Emily spoke again, her voice low. I'm not blaming them. I made the choices. I looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time in a long time I believed her. That didn't change anything, but it meant something. I'm not here for apologies, I said, and I'm not here to forgive you. I'm here to tell you that it's over. Fully. I won't answer your texts. I won't show up for coffee. I won't smile at you in public. Rachel opened her mouth. I'm not finished, I said. She closed it. You lit a fire expecting me to run through it to save the house. I didn't. I let it burn. I stood. Emily, I said, whatever life you build from here, do it without them. I nodded toward her friends. Because they weren't helping you grow. They were helping you test the limits of what you could destroy. Rachel's lip trembled. Nina blinked quickly, trying not to cry. Chase looked like he wished he were anywhere else. Emily said nothing, but after a few seconds, she stood too. I don't want your numbers anymore.